Hey Ben, good evening your time. How you doing? Mike, I think it's still on mute.
Schoolboy era. I'm very
No
well, thank
worries.
you very much.
Yeah,
How you
glad to
doing?
hear it. I'm doing pretty well. Glad to have you on today finally. I think this is going to be a really fun topic. I know
Yes.
that both you and I have done a lot of stuff on in content coverage, and I think it's a lot of
Yeah,
fun and creative ways to utilize this stuff for sure.
it is. That's one of the things I enjoy most about the whole buttons and bookmarks thing. Basically, the fact that they're very fun to use, but they're also very, very helpful. You know, the fact that the final part of your report is the presentation, how people use them. So the
Hmm.
functionality that they add is really good. But also that it's really fun to kind of play around with and be a bit more creative with, you know? It's just one of the
Exactly.
reasons I enjoy them so much. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
So
think
hopefully we
that.
can come up with some interesting ideas.
And I think they're very versatile, and certainly in the ways that you can design them, especially with the feature updates that they had last fall, in terms of all those extra formatting and
Yeah,
design elements. It looks like
yeah.
the
There are um,
go ahead.
there are some of those features that I very much enjoy using. Some of them I don't enjoy yet, which I'll bring up for sure. But yeah, they've done a lot of work on certainly using shapes as well as actually an aspect of buttons and bookmarks because you know shapes can be used as buttons, and that actually leads you to be able to explore a lot more possibilities of how you can present them and stuff.
Mhm,
It's nice. Yeah,
exactly.
it's good fun.
Uh, for the people tuning on who aren't familiar with you, some background, like I've come across you originally through some of the stuff on Twitter and LinkedIn, and then you also have
Mhm.
a channel that's been gathering quite a lot of subscribers recently as well, and you kind of live in the the YouTube space and doing cool content, showing people
Yeah,
interesting ways to utilize all this stuff. So like I've really enjoyed all of that. I'm happy to finally have you on.
thank you.
But do you want to give
I
a little
appreciate
background
that.
on kind of like how you got started, where you came from, and like how you ended up with like a YouTube channel?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Basically, so if I can call it something cheesy like a Power BI journey, that started for me back in, yeah, so very late 2016, so let's just call it 2017. And it was something that I picked up on simply because I'd been using Power Query and I said, oh, this is really cool. And a colleague mentioned, hey, if you think that's cool, check out this new Power BI thing. And it was newish, I suppose, back then. And I just really latched onto it. It was one of those. Sometimes you find a product or something that it just really you can enjoy using, and I was kind of getting into sports data at the same time, so I kind of used the sports data to build my. And I
Hmm.
spent many hours, you know, like midnight or 11 o'clock at night until like 3 o'clock in the morning, just kind of experimenting and playing around, and that just kind of led me to kind of at work kind of force other people to use it, sometimes against their will, sometimes willingly, and which is also how I ended up with this whole Power BI guy thing. It's it's the sort of thing that people refer to you at work if you are the person who uses, or in my case, never shuts up about Power BI. It was always, oh yeah, okay, so that's Ben, he's the Power BI guy. So I kind of latched onto this kind of let's call it a nickname. And yeah, the YouTube stuff and getting more involved with the community, that was coincidentally actually at the same time as the lockdown. I kind of wanted to start doing more. And I just actually just before Corona kind of started became a part of our lives. I started to say, okay, let's just see what I create on YouTube, and I saw all these channels doing and stuff. And it's quite an intimidating thing to get started with because there's a lot of content out there, and it's always this
Hmm.
question: okay, well, how can I add to that? What can I offer that's anything different? Um, and I just kind of stopped caring about that question, to be honest, because the fact is I just enjoy it. So I enjoy talking about Power BI. I guess I'd lost my audience because of Corona. I wasn't at work anymore. I couldn't do like in-person meetings. So I was like,
Sure.
let's just do something else. And I came and I enjoy it. And it's kind of become more and more interesting for me. So hopefully I mean, I enjoy one of the most important, most enjoyable parts of my job is giving Power BI trainings. So it's kind of
Hmm.
similar for me in that regard. Hopefully some people watch it and they enjoy it and learn something. And if I can learn something as I do it, like, you know, someone leaves me a comment, says, oh, you're doing this, maybe try this. And I've been getting into Deneb recently.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, as I've been doing that, I've learned a lot, and Daniel's been great and offered me some feedback and have you tried this and that could be better. It's really cool. So I think it's a very enjoyable experience to be part of that YouTubing kind of video community type thing. It's quite good fun.
Yeah, and I mean, I like certainly with Denim, I think that it's been a fantastic contribution to the community for building the bespoke custom visuals. But to some of your
Yeah.
things, like like regarding just the Power BI journey, like um, I think with any, blogging videos, whatever, as long as you're providing, it's either like new content or content with a different spin, right? Like as long as it's something that's a unique take on something at a minimum, there's usually going to be at
Mm,
least one other person out there who's going to find that interesting. But it's really
for
just
sure.
like writing down, as you mentioned. If I think something's cool, like I'll take a note, and maybe there's somebody else out there who would appreciate this little take or spin that
Yeah.
I've done with this
Yeah.
feature or product.
And for me, it's kind of like the same with blogs. There'll be like so many blogs that say the same thing, but if you can learn better from one particular blog, it's great that it's there. So for me, for example, there's a blog called Formu, and
Oh yeah,
this
Gilbert.
blog is, yeah, Gilbert. I'm speaking to him.
Yeah.
So I do my live chats as well on my channel as well, which are really good fun. Um, and I'm speaking to Gilbert, and somehow Gilbert's blog posts for me, that I feel like somehow we share a brainwave, because I don't understand anything as well as I do in a blog from what I see on his blog post. So it's nice to have that.
Gilbert's a fun colleague. We're both very candid in our conversations with each other, and he's great. He's uh, one of the most entertaining people that I can certainly have a conversation with.
Cool.
So
Excellent.
I
Excellent.
appreciate that you share like you said a brain connection with him. We get along splendidly.
Good. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Like I said, my live chats are nothing like yours. We just kind of really have really informal chats. There's not like showing anything of this or doing much work. It's like getting to know the person, all that kind of stuff. So I, in that
Mhm.
case, enjoy getting to know Gilbert on that level as well. There should be an enjoyable 45 minutes that we'll have together. Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. When he did a stream with me earlier last year, it was a blast.
Excellent. That's cool. No.
But yeah.
Yeah, but that's it. Just
Go ahead.
please.
Oh yeah, I was just
No, no,
so
you go for it, man.
oh cool. Yeah, so I was gonna say let's dive into some of the I think the primary topic that we'll be doing today, which is really
Yeah.
it's things that I've talked about similarly as well, but you'll have a lot of really interesting
Mm,
spins on it. But just creative ways to use both bookmarks and buttons and a combination thereof in
mm,
between. I know like one
yeah.
of my favorite things is utilizing them as visuals in a sense, just because they're so configurable, especially with states and everything. But I'm excited to see some of the stuff that you're going to show today.
That is true, actually. To use them as something just to display an image is also really helpful, and also because that image has an element of interaction. Like
Hmm.
if you want to click to a site just to have like a picture, there is a great thing. But no, I mean for me, um, I think someone mentioned it also in the comments before we actually got started. I think buttons are really present, and the bookmarks as well, of course. I mean, that's
Yes.
for the bookmarks. Bookmarks are really, really present, and everyone knows where they are, but there are certain functionalities that I see so rarely used that
It
can
was this
be
comment, I
very,
think.
very helpful. Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, just by clicking on the ellipses or right clicking on a bookmark, it immediately reveals different possibilities.
Well,
And
and
using,
go ahead.
no, that's you go for it, man.
It is the both my favorite one of my favorite features, but one of the most frustrating things to develop in, because there is zero
Mm,
documentation about it, and in 6 months, all you have is the effect when you click the bookmark, and you have the name of the
mm,
bookmark. There is nothing else that gives
yeah,
you any information about what was done or configured. So, like,
yeah,
I hate
it's
documenting,
true actually.
but it's one of the few times that I'm very like strict about being a
Mm,
documenter. When I use the selection pane,
good point.
I take a screenshot typically because that's faster for me than actually like writing down what I selected. I just screenshot it, drop it into OneNote, and at a minimum, like at least now I know these are the things that I selected, and usually I take a quick note. This bookmark is doing blah
Mm,
blah blah, and so that it
mm,
gives me enough context to be able to efficiently update it if I need to reconfigure the page. Which typically, if you add and change visuals on a page, there's a 50-50 chance you're going to have to reconfigure one of the bookmarks depending on how it was built to begin with, and you either have to delete it and
absolutely.
start from scratch, or you need to have it documented enough that you can know how to like update it appropriately.
I feel totally shamed right now because if I think about it, I may have actually never documented a bookmark. I'll be honest. You said
Okay.
that, and I'm like, "Oh, read it, because I've probably never. I mean, many elements, like
Yep.
of course what each your measures are doing and why they perform that way. But actually, it's probably never occurred to me to actually bookmark and to document a bookmark. But it's a really good point because there isn't anything there. It's
Hmm.
once you've set it up, it's invisible. It's kind of like magic, which is, I suppose, one of the cool parts the cool parts of it.
Exactly.
um but and there is so much you can do, and there's so many elements of reports you can change, and sometimes you can change the entire report, sometimes you're just changing one, and to show why is, yeah, very important. I'll take that. See, now I've learned something from you. Wonderful. Straight away, documenting bookmarks. There you go.
There you go.
Lesson
Yeah,
one. Thank you, mate.
it's one of my number one recommendations for people using it is your your future self is going to appreciate it when you come back and you have a little bit of a note that just says what you're doing with this.
Yeah, I mean, in general, with there are no best practices with bookmarks and how to use them. I really don't like when should you use a bookmark. For me, I never really consider this as a best practice there. Best practice that has to be, like, if you look at best practices for Power BI, people are going to say things like star schema, which is of course correct, right? No one's going to argue and
Hmm.
say that you shouldn't use a star schema. But when you're talking about bookmarks, something that definitely the sort of bookmark that I'm actually going to name one
Okay.
as we get started. So the first thing that I tend to do on any report is to create a bookmark for the resetting of the slices, right?
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you
for
have a
like
bunch of,
a clear page, reset page. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And for me, that's really the only, I don't see why any page of a Power BI report that has more than one slicer on a page should exist without that. For me, that's the
Yeah.
only sort of thing I can sit down and say, that is a best practice, you know?
Well, there are certain things you just
Other
can't do
than,
without bookmarks. Like you can't toggle between visuals without like a bookmark to flip between them.
exactly.
Yeah.
But the necessity to have that, you don't need to have it. You don't actually definitely have to do it. You can
True,
do it. It's
true.
really cool, and it's really helpful to the user. But the report can easily exist without it. But the
Yeah,
only
yeah.
thing that
Sure.
for me, the only thing that, I mean, I'm probably taking this to the extreme. The only thing that it can't exist without, I mean, it can exist without, obviously,
Yeah.
but for me, shouldn't exist without, is the resetting of slices. This reset to any original state,
Hmm.
Um, so this is the first thing, and that's the great thing about it. It's so easy to set up. I mean, if you've never set up a bookmark before, that is so easy to do.
Now, do you consider that
It's
different from
wonderful.
like just the reset to default option that's built into the Power BI service?
Yeah, because I hate that. I hate that button so much, and also, I think this is also a really valid point that you bring up, because often, you're sharing reports and stuff, but sometimes or often, for me, frequently, I create reports that I share openly. I create, like, if I have a fantasy football report, that button doesn't, you know,
Agreed.
if you, and also if even in certain places where I work sometimes in my job, I will share the embed, the secure embed link with my colleagues, so they don't have to see it in the workspace. They can just see it within a browser. And it depends on who's actually using the
Hmm.
report. If you actually just look at a report, it's perfectly secure within your browser, you don't have that additional functionality that exists within a workspace, because they're just opening in a browser. And sometimes for me, that's a better way of sharing a report, because of the fact that they're not a user who perfectly legitimately doesn't need to know a lot about
Yeah.
Power BI. They just want to access their data. So it's about understanding people who are using Power BI reports on different levels and allowing them to get the same functionality.
Agreed. Well,
So
and
it's
like you just want to make things as intuitive and as easy to use as possible. Absolutely.
exactly, and that's actually also one of my favorite things to do. I mean, when we get to screen sharing, I can show you a couple of things that I do, of course,
Yeah. I can
for
flip
that thing,
over if you
because
want.
yeah, go for it. I think I'm already got my exactly, I do. So, I mean, for the sake of this um, presentation, this talk, I should say, whatever I want to call it,
Sure.
this live stream. Presentation sounds so formal, right? I've created this report. So this is all like fantasy football data, and I use fantasy football data or fantasy soccer for the sake of your good self, mate. And this is the sort of data that I use for most of my, experimenting and trying out different stuff. But if we talk about like the first thing I would do on this sort of this sort of report. The first thing for me here, if you have more than one slicer, which I do, yeah. So I've got my slicer where I can select player position and strength. It doesn't matter what these slicers represent, but you know, if I say I want to spend a certain amount of money, so 6 million to 13 million, and then I've got my strength of whatever is 3, and I've got defenders. Oh, there you go. That was a bad selection. Try again. There you go. Forwards. Obviously, it's frustrating for the user to have to go and get rid of 3 slices. Now, as you say, in this service, you do have this option just to say, okay, click that button, reset to default. But if that doesn't exist, or if you're viewing it in full screen mode, or if you're not even aware that, I mean, quite often people ask the question of what is button, what does it do? So if we can just, and I prefer in general, everything that we build in the Power BI report for me should be in the body of the report.
Yeah.
It does make it harder for ourselves building the report, because obviously, you know, we say space is difficult, right? If you have certain visualizations and where to place stuff. So there is that element. Maybe I'm making my job harder than it needs to be, but sometimes I'm being a little bit too picky, but I think it looks cool. If anything, for me, in a Power BI report should be on this canvas here. And this will also come back to later when we're talking about the navigation buttons between pages as well, right? So when you have this, instead of having the user to have to minimize or understand what buttons mean, if I can just click here to have a button, which then when I get rid of any slices that I don't want to have, right click and update it. So that now the button that I've created is my no slicer default. And just one thing, I'm not sure how important anyone deems this to be, but I consider this one of the most important things for working with buttons, just to save your own sanity, right? These ellipses for the more options, I never ever click on that when I'm working with bookmarks. Because if you miss, you actually click the bookmark, which means you activate the bookmark. So if I want to try and get the ellipses and I click here, nightmare, because it means I've now activated my bookmark. And when I'm trying to change it, it just kind of makes you want to cry a little bit, you know? So
yeah, I think similar
me,
to like having a control to activate the button on the page, it should be control to click, or at least a setting for that over there. I have made the mistake of not hitting the ellipses correctly and screwing up an update over there so many times.
I mean, for me, I just right click and it's all there. If you right click, you get everything you need.
Yeah.
You know, so if anyone isn't aware of that, I would say save yourself some you know, mental health and right click it. You know what I mean? Because obviously you're going to want to rename it. And to be honest, I got to a point with bookmarks that I was really lazy. But one of the updates that Power BI released recently regarding the bookmark navigation actually made me a lot better, because it's actually quite cool. So the point is, you know, you rename it and you say like no slices. I know this is really basic stuff, but you start with the basics, right? You got no slices.
Exactly.
And you go insert a button. And just for the sake of people watching, whenever they do watch this, I just updated yesterday to the new format pane. So if I can't find anything, it's not because it's my first time with Power BI, it's because it's my first or third time I'll run about with this new format pane. So, you know, formatting of buttons and stuff and how it goes. I mean, shape. Ugh, style. Text. Here we go. Okay, on. See, I couldn't even find the text. This is ridiculous, you know what I mean?
They reorganized pretty much everything.
Everything, yeah, exactly. So I know, so this is not anything that I'm formatting beautifully, you understand, right? So for the sake of having something in a report that's just that, a button, that of course, when you hover over, if you want to use up, you go back to your style and you want to go, and this is what, I love this as well, by the way. This is also very underused, I think, you know, the style and then on hover. And like tells you what it does when you hover over, you know, click to reset and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, you do this and it's telling you what it's going to do. So I do like to approach this stuff from a user who doesn't know a great deal. That, I think, saves me the time of, yes, I have to do these things, but it saves me the time of the questions I can get asked by, I don't know, let's just say 10 people ask me the same question. What does it do? How does it work? Just by making these little things, just by creating this button with a hover over, you can immediately allow the users to know exactly what's going to happen, you know? So, you know, then I reapply slices, and then all I've got to do is go back here and say no slices, and then it resets my slices wonderfully once I've applied that action, which I didn't do, obviously.
I also like utilizing the
Option.
tooltips as well, which allows you to have you an additional information that can pop up onto those.
Exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. Um, yeah. So again, it's a small thing, it's a start, but I really think that if you could talk about slices and how they should be used, if we could at least get the point across that this sort of thing is a fantastic users to have, you're going to save yourself some time, and you're going to have a better experience for any user who's, you know, enjoying or getting started, or is even, and that's the thing, we're talking about someone who is, you know, has experience. You're just saving time. We spoke before about the new visualization pane and the number of clicks, right? Like, if we can do something in one click instead of making the users do 2 clicks, it's a good thing, right? Like, if we're saying, if I'm looking at a report, and because we look at a published report, you tend to look at it in full screen mode, right? So to use any reset to
Hmm.
default button, you're going to have to come out of your full screen mode. This is what we're doing. We're building something inside the body of the report that's allowing the user just to have a nice interface and a nicer experience using our report. So
Agreed.
this is the first thing I would always say to do. On the same, in the same area, you know, navigation buttons as well, which is come up recently because of you have this update with the page navigation pane. I know on a published report, you can navigate your pages in multiple ways. Like, you can, if you don't hide your pages down here, you can just click through your pages actually on the pane, which is, I believe, on the left-hand side now in the workspace, right? But again, if you're not using the workspace, that doesn't exist, or certainly doesn't exist in that manner. So again, I don't see why we have a report where the page navigations aren't also simply within the body of the report. If you're on full screen, it's just there. It's easy.
Hmm.
So page navigation is a different thing, though, because as much as I love this, and they had probably announced this update in whenever it was, I think May of 2021, and then they released it in mid-November or mid-December, where you can just basically go to your buttons and then navigator and then your page navigator. Now, obviously, this report is very, very basic. I've only got 2 pages, but the point being is this. My options to navigate, this is a wonderful thing. The concept, the idea is so good to be able to navigate this way. Now, I know this isn't bookmarks, this is purely buttons, but you know, we said buttons and bookmarks, so.
Exactly.
Our options currently, if I can find them, we can basically say pages. Here we go. We can say show hidden pages on or off. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, for example, what I usually do when I'm creating a report, I'll hide every single page other than my first page. This is my landing page, and every other page is hidden because I want to allow the user to navigate within my page navigation pane. The issue for that is, if I click on show hidden pages, it also shows the drill through pages.
Yeah.
And drill through pages are kind of by definition designed to not be accessed by a button. You have to drill through to them. So my options at this point are so limited. So I kind of thought it would be cool to kind of change that and, you know, say, okay, can we change this option so you can either on each page have the option show this page within the page navigator. At some point, I can maybe put a link somewhere in the in this YouTube chat or whatever to post the idea. So if someone likes that idea, please feel free to vote for it, because this page navigator is an awesome idea, but the way it's designed, the way it's currently worked, is just not currently designed is just not really working for me anyway. Not to be really selfish, but I think it's also something that other users will also come across when they start to use this sort of functionality. So
Exactly. And I think for like the scenarios that you mentioned, where if you have any kind of report page navigation or drill through pages, that like because there's no way to apply a filter to this, unfortunately. You can't go to the filters pane and then choose separately what pages there are. So there should be an option to additionally
Right.
show hidden pages, but hide drill through and then hide report tooltip.
Because right here it says show tooltip pages off or on. So if I click there,
Yeah,
show tooltip pages, I can go
yeah,
through. Obviously, you'd never want to do that. Why would you ever want to go through a tooltip page?
that one makes sense.
So my original idea was to say, okay, cool. Then I'll just mark all of my drill through pages as a tooltip page. But actually, you can't drill through to a tooltip page. It doesn't work. It just,
so if you actually, I've never
is
tried that. So if you turn on tooltip, it won't let you drill through.
Yeah,
That would have been a nice solution and probably a good blog post. Hey, if you want to hide drill through pages, mark them as tooltip.
I already had a 2-minute video planned, and then I was devastated when I tested the functionality. I was like, oh no, didn't work. We love a good workaround in the Power BI community, right? But unfortunately, on this particular occasion, not going to happen. Really, for me, because that doesn't exist, we're still left with this. I mean, I do use this. I don't have it open. I have a report where I do use that functionality. I'm just going to pull this report across, actually, if that's okay. So I do have, this is the actual fantasy football report that I'm talking about. So this here is just referred to as the purple report by quite a few people, which I enjoy, to be honest. This is actually the page navigation pane, but I do have drill throughs on this page. So the question is, where are the drill throughs on this page navigation pane? They're all hidden behind this visualization.
No,
so what I can do, if I wanted to use it, I had to just say, okay, I'll put this here, and then the bottom part I'll just hide behind a different visualization.
So you ordered it in a way and then sized it just to have them. You know what? Like, what's the phrase? If it looks stupid but it works, it's not stupid.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
So this is what I do at this point. I mean, otherwise, of course, you still can create individual page navigation buttons. This is no problem whatsoever. But it's just a shame that this functionality doesn't exist, because it's a really cool functionality. And in general, I mean, it's not difficult to set up, but it's unfortunate that you have to do it how you do it. So really, here we have our action on, and we just go to page navigation, and then we choose our page. You know. So that works as well, but creating individual buttons from each page is very time consuming, and you have to do all the formatting and set them up correctly and format each individual button. But the page navigation pane is so wonderful in the fact that you just set up all in one go and it's pretty much ready to go. So yes, I still at this point will create individual buttons, but when the time comes, or when I can hide them behind other visualizations, then I'll just use that page navigation thing, you know.
Yep. No, I agreed. So if you have the link to drop into, you should put that in now, and then give people a chance to vote on it if they want.
I do. I will. I'll pull it up. To be honest, I think I was scared of having some duplicate sound, so I kind of closed our YouTube chat window. To be honest, but
No worries.
I'll find it. I'll bring it up.
Okay.
So anyway, moving on to more interesting stuff, because this is all, like I said, pretty basic at this point. Again, moving back to this original point, what do you do if you want to, only have the bookmarks affect certain visualizations, if you only want to, not affect everything on a page? And this is quite, on the one hand, forward thing to do, and there's many use cases for it. It's a little bit fiddly. I mean, bookmarks are always fiddly, right? You always have to, play around with them a little bit and do things once or twice. But one of my favorite ways of this sort of thing is to say, okay, only have a bookmark, or the reason why I would do it, I should say, is this visualization here. I have multiple levels of the hierarchy. As you can see here, my rows, I've got the team, and I've got a position, right? Again, at the risk of someone telling me that I'm making my job harder than it needs to be, what I'll do most of the time when I create a report, if I can, and most of the time I can, is I actually switch off your all of these. I don't like these being displayed on published reports, because I don't find them particularly intuitive. I don't find the way they display information, again, going back to a user who doesn't know a great deal, or, you know, the way they look and the way they kind of can impede on other visualizations is not my favorite thing. So how do we get around that? What I'm going to do to ensure that I can control a hierarchy here without actually having these buttons attached, as we know, you know, like down next level or expand the entire hierarchy. If I want to do that, how am I going to do it without this? So basically for me, this is the classic thing about creating a bookmark and then right clicking to see actually what it can do. Because I wanted to control the data, but I only wanted to control the data on this particular visualization, right?
Gotcha.
So if I'm going to go here and I'm going to create a bookmark, all I want it to do is to affect what's happening here. For example, if I go one step down and, oh, let's just expand the entire hierarchy out much nice and fast. Good. I was worried it's going to have performance issues there. So let's just quickly update this bookmark by right clicking on it. And I'm going to come back up in my hierarchy. And then I obviously click on this bookmark. It's going to take me one step down in that hierarchy, right? Issue with that, of course, is that if I'm doing the same action and I do this, unless I've made some kind of terrible mistake, I click on that. Of course, it's getting rid. It's affecting this slicer, right? Because it's got the entire page, and I don't want that to happen. I want it, yes, to affect data, but I don't want it to affect the data on any other visualization. So just this one. So this is when you're going to do your whole right click and selected visuals. So I don't want it to have impact on the entire every single visualization, just my selected visuals. So as soon as I do that, and to be honest, this is one of the most finicky, the most difficult to set up parts for me, certainly of bookmarks, because for whatever reason, maybe it's just me, I tend to get it wrong the first time. I have to, like, for some reason, do it again. So I'll click here, I'll try it if it works. Click on the visualization, make sure I've done that, and then I go selected visuals. So hopefully on this time, on this occasion, when I go back up again, and I click on just to randomly select a slicer, and I do that. Hopefully, see now, if I do it again, see it. There you go. Why does that? So weird. Oh, that's correct though. 1 second. There you go. So I want this one to affect the data on only the selected visual. This is what I'm saying. Please tell me I'm doing wrong. I get this wrong so often, it's insane. But sometimes it works eventually. So this is my selected visual.
Well, and one thing that I find helpful is also having the selection pane turned on as well. And I rather than necessarily selecting on the page, I will use the selection pane to make my visual selection.
That's a fair point, mate.
Yeah, because like that,
matrix, right?
Yeah, and I would say also, like, having this goes to a good best practice, which is giving everything in here that doesn't have a title, at least, like a friendly name, so it's easy to understand what's where, and using groups and all that other stuff to help organize those. But
the grouping is fantastic. The grouping is also really helpful when you come to your to using the new bookmark pane. It's really helpful for that. But basically, once this is set up, so basically, you rename it and you say, okay, so expand hierarchy. They call it expand matrix. And this is actually, if I do typos, I'm just going to ignore them because I'm terrible at typing. And then the same thing here, go back up again. And then also add a slicer, add a bookmark here and go selected visuals. And then I'm going to go rename and man matrix. Like that. So then I have the two bookmarks that are going to work only on the matrix. And for me, that's a great way of getting around this issue that you have of having to use these. I do understand, by the way, of course, there is the functionality where you can say on your row header to switch on your plus icons like that.
Yep.
This is great, but if you want to do them all at the same time, it's difficult to then use these,
Yeah, so do a quick sanity check for me. If you go to any of those rows, like say LIV, right click on it.
Are you gonna expand
I think
all?
Yeah, you can do it. You can expand the whole level right there.
You can, and it is a nice thing to have.
Yep.
This is, again, a user experience thing though,
Of
because how
course.
many users know to right click? And I have the same issue with drill throughs, to be honest. I mean, I love using drill throughs. They're really, but the entire way drill throughs actually work in Power BI, I don't think, other than using now this very nice new, the newer tooltip.
Oh, where
You
it
probably
has a
had
little,
that.
it's a little pop-up that shows up. Yeah, yeah. And you can have a drill through button, to be fair, too. Like that, that is one thing that's nice to assign a big fat button onto the page that says, hey,
You,
and becomes active when you make a selection. So like I mean, it might be something you'll be showing at some point, but there are
you
definitely
totally
ways to,
can.
yeah, go ahead.
Mm. No, no. My only, I've come across as like this really negative person right now, but I'm really not. I think it's great that you have all these different options, but the drill through button is a fantastic idea, but you have to click on the option first. Now, you have to essentially, if you want a drill through button to be active, you have to click on the value that you want to be drilled through too, right?
Correct. Yeah, you make the
In order,
filter selection on a visual, and then use
yeah,
the drill through button goes from disabled to like an active. So it
yeah,
visually tells you onto the page, oh, you can click this now to go to this page. I find
exactly.
those
Which
I
is
find those useful for like embedded reports and reports where you get a lot of first time users. If you have a lot of churn of new
mm,
users, buttons and stuff like that are great versus like the right click. It's yes, it might not be intuitive, but if there's an initial training for like let's say the 50 people in the company, once they know right click has drill through, they will
mm,
just know that right click has drill through. But you have to explain that. But it does not work
exactly.
if you have a bunch of people on a publicly facing website who have never seen Power BI
Mm,
and they see an embedded report. Well, you can't
mm.
train thousands of people coming across this for the first time to right click. So you need a button or something else very obvious for newbies that like this is a thing you can do.
The one thing that everyone does on a report is hover over, right? The one
Yes.
thing. Not everyone clicks, not everyone right clicks, but everyone hovers, right?
Yep.
And the hovering thing is what's for me is what's really helpful, because everyone does kind of put a mouse somewhere, and because it then prompts you to drill through. That for me so far has been the best option. Again,
I agree.
I do utilize drill through buttons for sure, but that's probably the one of those parts where I thought with the buttons it didn't really quite help everyone, because sometimes unless it's activated, some people are like, what's this button here for? That doesn't do anything, unless of course you're right in the button what you should do. Anyway, we can get for sure. I don't want to ramble off on
There was
random
one thing that
directions as I'm known to do.
yeah, I was gonna say there's one thing that was pointed out, and I wanted to let's see if I can throw this onto the screen quickly. So you're related to selected
Mm-hmm.
visuals. I think this was a good mention. Is sadly and annoyingly, when you do selected visuals, anything in the filter pane still gets reset back to when that bookmark was made. There's no separate option to also disable a link to the filters pane. So that can be a
This is
frustrating
awesome.
feature. Yeah.
So,
So if you created a bookmark
okay,
with a
yes,
filter and the
yes,
filter pane
yeah,
selected, even when you have selected visuals applied, it still resets that filter in the filter pane back. There's no way to disable a reset outside of the one thing that will do that is you have to turn off
mm,
filtering. So if you're maybe toggling visibility of visuals on the page, you're already going to disable the
mm,
filter option, so it's not going to affect the filters pane. But there's no way to reset filters just for the slicers on the page, ignoring filter selections in your
mm.
filters pane. So if you're using a combination of the two of
To,
them, it's a bit limiting.
yeah, and to the point where that even it'll expand out the filter pane, which I find it quite a
I,
frustrating aspect as well.
I have had one of those things where I don't really notice it happening, but then all of a sudden, like, wait, why did my darn it? Okay,
Mm.
my filters panes pop in. I just made like 6 bookmarks, and it's resetting it back open again. All right, so I have to go and
Yeah.
then up. Yeah, yeah. I have. That's probably the. I'm pretty good with bookmarks now, but that's the one mistake that
Mm.
I still probably do is, okay, when I am making these, I need to collapse my filter pane first and then make the bookmark. Again,
Yeah.
it just goes to show all those things where it's like it's such when implemented correctly, it's amazing. But there's so many small little considerations to have when making it and configuring it to
Yeah.
get it just right. Like to me,
It's
it's Power BI's equivalent of VBA in Excel. When like it is a magical thing that can do so many really cool automated tasks, but getting it right and set up and configured properly where it doesn't break something is really hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be heartbreaking. It really can.
Yeah.
I gotta be fully honest with you. I I don't get around the issue that you just mentioned. It's never a consideration for me
Mm.
because I'm going to get some backlash on this. I don't use a filter pane.
Yeah.
I'm no fan of the filter pane. For me, this is how I build a Power BI report. I'll open up my PBIX and I'll do this. Boom, done. Other than some stuff that, you know, to get around. And this is what I'm showing you now is an ugly, really basic report that I put together
Sure.
just for demonstrations and playing around with. But no, I don't tend to, and this makes me sound like I'm being really restrictive for my users. But again, I like everything being on the page, slices, everything. And I know the filter pane can be helpful, and I understand the benefits of it. But for me, I like to balance the benefits against any sort of confusion or what can exist where. So you're quite right. You do have this option and this difficulty of the filter pane and the bookmarks and how they interact with the filter pane. What you said was quite right. The way you can a potential workaround to that, but it's not. I would just, as a general rule, do as little here as possible, because I think this is maybe go slightly off topic. This to me also comes back to, you know, cleanliness of data and what we're actually loading into a report. Because for me, if I'm bringing in the data that I need, I'm using this a lot less. And visual level filters can be very confusing to users, just to see why is this filtered that way and why is that filtered that way. And of course, you know, page level filters I understand, but if I'm using a page level filter, I would tend to put that in a slicer. So it's slightly off topic, and I apologize that I can't give a more as a nicer answer to that particular issue. But yeah, for me, for the 95% of the time, this is not something that I consider, because that's simply the restriction of the way I work, you know.
Yeah, well, and
Because that's how
it
I
depends
organize
on
myself.
the use cases and everything. In general, I do a hybrid approach. It's like the most common filters go onto the page, and there are a few things like
Yeah.
it's easier to do a date range with a range slider or numerical range
Mm.
with some of the boxes on
Yeah.
slicers, and then I kind of like if somebody needs a bunch of different filters for a very large like enterprise model, you're probably going to need potentially a combination of like 15 or 20 different filters because you have hierarchy levels and all this stuff, and it can be, in theory,
Mm.
be a lot to dump onto the page. So those kind of get put into the filters pane. But as you mentioned, visual
Yeah.
level filters can be confusing. I make sure that when I deliver the report, every visual on the page has all visual level filters hidden. So they don't get those extra pop-ups when they click it and like, wait, am I supposed to filter here or
Sure.
here? Sadly,
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
a
Fair enough.
huge pain to do that. I wish there was just a button to say hide all visual level filters and I could just snap to it. Like you have to click per visual, per filter and go and like, you're basically spamming your left mouse button as you hide every
Yeah.
single one. And then if you update it,
Yeah.
oh shoot, I forgot to hide those 2 new fields that I added. So now you have 2 that pop up. So
Yeah.
it's it's a best practice I consider is to make sure those are all hidden because you don't want a person to filter on the visual rather than the page. But it is a very
Yeah.
tedious
Yeah.
process to update that.
It's a very good point. It's I never thought about it, to be honest, but it's a good point that you can do that. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think everyone has their own ways of working,
Of course.
of getting around these things. And at some point, I'm sure someone will force me to use a filters pane, so I'll bear all that in mind, and I'll get to all those issues as they arrive. Regarding, sorry, just back to this thing before I forget where I was and lose track of what I was. This is something, the grouping of bookmarks, that for me wasn't particularly that important, other than organizational level, and maybe it's because I'm not a particularly organized human and I didn't do it that often. But because now we have this, and this is interesting for me because this functionality works perfectly and beautifully, and it was the implementation, other than the first month, it had some pretty heavy bugs which have been sorted out now. So if you go into your view and you go into your, excuse me, if you go to your insert and your buttons and your bookmark navigator, that's a wonderful thing. The
No, I
Bookmark
agree.
Navigator is just a fantastic, and I didn't actually expect this to exist because I knew they were going to do one, but I didn't do this one as well. So when you use this, by default, you're going to say, you know, show all the bookmarks, yeah. But you can then select which hierarchy or which bookmark group to use, and then it just shows just the ones that you've selected. This is a fantastic thing. It really, really helps just to be that little bit faster. So now instead of having to create individual buttons and going through and select them, it's wonderful to have this here, and it works that way, you know? So now this works perfectly. And that now allows, in my opinion, my user, whoever that may be, again, it's about placement as well. Where am I going to place this thing? Putting in a space that it's obvious that it relates to this particular visualization. You can do that in multiple ways, as in kind of connect it via a background, place it somehow, if you can, over your actual visualization, that sort of stuff. But to have that level of functionality, I've got a really obvious spelling mistake there, I understand that. But to have this level of functionality within the report, for me, as you say, and you're quite right, mate, I fully understand that you can do it here, but as you said before, the right clicking of a button. I'm creating other issues. I totally get that, because now I have to say, okay, I've got these buttons, where am I going to put them? How does that fit in with the feel of the rest of my report? Because in general, we like to separate things out, right? We like to have, you know, our slices at the top, the things that like really affect the data, that's separated. But when we start creating buttons that do individual pages and individual actions for individual visualizations, it gets more complex. But I do think it kind of adds an element of the report, and it's just nicer to have my user just to click on something. And you can do something similar actually with bookmarks, which I really like, because you have this bookmarks tooltips. I'm forgetting words here, mate. Because you have these options, you know, all visual, selected visual, then you got data, display, and then current page. So you can do pretty much exactly the same thing, but for a tooltip, which is really cool, because if you can allow, I mean, for me, if you're looking at who's using the report and what data they want to see from it, and one of the most enjoyable things is to allow users just to see different insights of the data in a faster way, you know, and tooltips is of course a really strong part of that. So if I have this of a tooltip here, for example, and here, this is my tooltip, and it's just basically the accumulated points total, right? So here I have by round. So if I go then back up, I've got it by year, and then I've got it by month of the year. And that's what's really cool. So for example, now if I select it on this particular level, and then I say, I add my tooltip, and I'm going to say, I want it to affect data display, but I don't want it to be current page. I'll just take this element off. And I can do the same thing again. No, not that. And then I create another bookmark, and I say I don't want to affect current page. Just rename these. Should always name them straight away, but I do it badly. And then I'm going to get this one that just say date. Then if I group them, and then I call it tooltip. If I've done it correctly, and sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, as you've seen already. We can allow the user to then select the type of tooltip they're going to look at when they actually use this visualization, which is pretty cool. Because if I again go to my insert my where am I? Navigator, and my bookmarks navigator. Gives us all of them, as it always does. And I go bookmarks, I'm going to go hierarchy. No, not hierarchy.
Tooltip. Yep. Excellent.
So, fingers crossed, eh? This is all. So now, if I click on my week, shown by week. If I click on date, it'll be shown by date. So that's a really cool thing. I really enjoy doing that because, well, for obvious reasons, right? Obviously, you need to ensure the user knows what the hell they're doing. I couldn't just put those buttons there and say, okay, that's it, I'm done now. I have to really, if I would just add a title, for example, and say, you know, choose hierarchy of of tooltip, like that. No, we would do this in a better way. We'd spend more time planning our titles. We'd spend more time seeing how it looks and how the two things integrate. But if I hover over here and I'm looking at it that way and I see this above, it's really obviously connected. Again, you could do that with a shape in the background and like create it so it looks like one visualization, which is always a fun thing to do. So here, set it by week, here, set it by date, and you see it by date. And that just allows the user to see a nice little interaction. And really, I think the more insights you can get on one page, the better. To an extent, of course, you don't want to clog it up, but this way you're kind of giving the user more insight, but you're not clogging anything up because the tooltip remains a tooltip. You're not adding a visualization. You're not adding anything that feels intrusive. You're not increasing loading time, because this is also something that you want to. I'm not a massive fan of tooltips. I'm not a massive fan of buttons or bookmarks to kind of change visualizations on one page. It's great, it works sometimes, but if you have to like hide visualizations, but this, there is an exception to that, which I'll mention, by the way. But to change the hierarchy on one page, I mean, you don't need it for hierarchy, but you see my point. To like hide visualizations, bring them forward, it can be messy, but when it's on a different page, it just works so nicely. And as you saw before, it was really easy to set up. It was simply, you know, deselecting the current page button. And because a tooltip is such a basic page, there's not a lot you can get wrong. I find ways to get it wrong, but generally it works quite seamlessly. And I think it's something that people appreciate because you can just switch so seamlessly between the two.
Well, to that, like,
this is a nice thing
if you just have a configured report tooltip page, you can also, like, you know, as you're mentioning, like the visibility toggle, you can, you know, reconfigure your entire report tooltip page to use a bunch of different visuals. So you can switch between basically like tooltip perspective A and B, have a button on this page that just basically just hides and then shows. And like, regardless of what page it is on, you want to make sure that, you know, you have your, typically if you're toggling visuals or anything else, properly configured, usually grouped, and then making sure that any of the selection order is also maintained with some configured features. But I do like to be able to toggle around, and one of my favorites is like a line visual. Like you can't have anomaly detection and forecasting on at the same time. So like having a line chart where you could have a button that pops between the two. I did that on my like Google Analytics report. It's nice to be able to have like the two perspectives, because it's, you know, I don't need a separate page for this. I just want to be able to toggle between feature A and feature B. They can't both exist at the same time on the same visual. Yeah.
No, that's a cool report, and that's a perfect example of lovely usage. And I'm not just saying that because you're sitting in front of me, or I'm sitting on the other side of the camera. It is a very cool report, and it works very well. I think just with certain features, you have to be careful about what you're toggling between. Otherwise, it's just like you're creating a second page on the first page for like no reason, you know. This is also kind of comes to one of the things I appreciate doing, and it's a similar vein of, I know it's really popular to kind of create slicer panes. It's similar to that. It's a similar technique to that, I should say, to create a slicer pane. What I think works quite well sometimes is if you have a report or a page of a report, and you know, for example, that some user or it's used in different levels. Like I know you have a report where, you know, sometimes it's used in like management meetings, and they really only care about one visualization within that report. Yeah. What I think is quite a nice functionality. And here we're balancing this between the necessary and just the stuff that looks really cool and is actually quite nice to implement and quite fun to do. Because again, bookmarks, tooltips, they are fun. It's kind of like it's as much as it can be frustrating and take ages to set up, it's nice to just add an element that just kind of looks cool, and the users go, yeah, okay, it's quite nice. Yeah, that kind of stuff, you know. So if we take any visualization on this page, just for an example, yeah, and just do, if I just copy it, and then I start to do stuff like, if I do a shape, and I'll just take like well, not that, that's weird. I'm going to take a rectangle and just bang it across my entire page, just like that. Now it's starting to get weird, I understand that. And properties, style, there you go. I'm just such a sigh of relief when I actually find something on this new. I know everyone else is used to it by now, but I am not. fill, background color. Where's background? Background is.
Yeah, see, like it's the general settings and all of those are the ones that because yeah, it's located over there in under effects. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So like you're in general, and like that
Okay.
subpage of effects is like the most you know I don't like that it's further clicks away to change the background of the
Yeah.
visual itself. Yeah.
That had me sweating there, mate. I don't know what the hell was going on, but it's okay. We got there eventually with some guidance from you. There, we got there. So this is essentially just a rectangle to create some kind of effect, right? And then if you put a visualization on top of that, which allows us to kind of like do like a focus thing. I think this is a really, like, again, this is like a really strange example, right? But if you have a button that will allow you to see a certain view. So now, for example, if I take this visualization and I change what I have inside. So instead of saying I just have whatever my total points,
Mm-hmm.
I actually use like a selected measure, and I have whatever, just say I have here a slicer. What I want, if we can do this thing whereby we could just set it up so when the user clicks a button, all this stuff comes to the front, you know? Like everything on this page is hidden until the user clicks this button. So what I'd need, of course, is like a button to kind of like take me back. So let's just
Mm-hmm.
say, I don't know, let's go standard like back button, like no worries. And this in itself would be like a view. Again, we spend time, we make it look nicer. Maybe put this here so it looks like individual
So there's
elements.
another little like
You could,
fun trick too that like I like on this is make that full page object a back button.
hmm?
Because think of like if something pops up, you can click the gray area to exit out of it, which is like what a lot of software does. So like I did that with when I used to make a Slicer's pane way back in the day for bookmarks. I would have a giant full page button behind it that would kind of white out, semi-transparent the page to make it seem like it's popping in front. And if they just clicked anywhere on that, that becomes a back button too. So I would have a dedicated back button, but this would be like a secondary action for them.
That's actually quite a good idea. And if actually, okay, so if you're using a secondary back button, okay, what I like about it with actually without having a secondary back button is the fact it's just less visual elements to kind of hide and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Because obviously all these things you can group and stuff, but one of the things that you can also do is instead of making it cover like the entire page, which you can do here, depending on where you have your slices, just like drag it down a little bit so you can still actually use your slices when you have this, you know? It's a none of this is, I would say, necessary, but it's certainly a nice functionality to have on any report that you're creating, especially if you know the report is going to be perhaps used in a room with 10 people sitting there and they're looking at it on like a big screen, right? Because it's harder to do that sort of thing with Power BI to bring everyone's attention to one visualization. I know you have focus mode. I get that. Focus mode's okay, and you can expand the visualization to full page. But when you do that, you don't have the option to, you know, like make other things bigger, like making like the data labels, for example, make the data labels bigger. So it's easier to see on what we're creating now, which is like a full screen mode. So
exactly.
let's quickly do this. And here, for example, I could also say, you know, don't change my data. I just want display. Because if I've applied any filters and I pop it out, perhaps I actually want it just to remain with the filters that I've had on that front page, right? On the page that I have here. So when I use this bookmark, we're going to have, not going to change the display. And then, of course, you need to go through your process of getting rid of these things to create your original page. And again, you can save yourself time by grouping these elements. Tends to be I don't group them. I keep them as individual elements, because when you group them, you get this whole background thing, and you got to switch the background up. I don't know. I'm just weird like that. I don't like to.
The thing that I do like though is when you group something, you can show and hide at the group level, which is really useful. So you don't have to select all of them. Yeah. All you have to do is select the top group thing, and then that becomes when you do selected visuals, everything inside of that group automatically gets updated. So if you actually add something new into that group, later on for a selected visual, that's been disabled, it automatically hides and shows whatever new elements you put into there too. So there are some like I would say update shortcuts that does add down the road. Like I again, like kind of thinking of that example of the Bookmarks pane that I used to make back in the day. Grouping for that made it 1,000 times easier because there was like 40 elements that used to be into those. Granted, I stopped using it a bit for the filters pane that we have now, just because it's a performance issue with all those objects loading onto the page that slows stuff down if you have too many. But yeah, I've learned to love grouping over the years.
It's a valid point, to be honest, and it's one of those things that I don't do simply because I just got used to doing it this way, and with the grouping worked, and I never saw any. If you do it as much as you've done it, I totally understand that. Because you had some really complex objects going on with all the different groupings that you had together. If I were to have those, I would do it that way too, to be honest. And again, maybe just an element of laziness on my behalf.
And I want to actually point out, Mark just had a really good comment on like focus mode. If I can send that to here we go. Yeah, like focus mode, it can actually be pretty bad if you have dark layout, because it goes back up to white when you do that. So this actually could be a good solution.
Does it really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's I thought like, okay, this is fine to do it this way, but again, it's you don't control anything, you know. You have that on your page. I know this is what you have. However, when you do something like this with the pop-up, you can do a lot more. Like for now, for example, if I wanted here, I could also have slices here, and I could have a selected measure, so I could change the measure that I have. But when you just expand the measure out into the focus mode, that's all you have. You have that visualization, and you're stuck with it. And for me, I understand it perfectly. If you want to use that, like, by all means use it. But when you're talking about having a report and again, maybe it's simply a me problem. I switch this stuff off. You simply don't have that option, you know. You have to have your let's go away, please. There you go. If you have your visual headers switched off, you don't have that option anymore, you know. And because I switch my visual headers off most of the time, then we lose this option. It's not a massive necessity, again, to have this sort of thing, but by having it, and even for me, if I'm sitting on my desktop, it doesn't have to be on a screen, to have this and to have all the different elements. It's a really helpful thing to have. And you could also argue, of course, that you could just put this on a separate page. But what I like about this is it's about context, right? Because navigating between pages and reports tends to allow the user to think that perhaps some context has been changed. There's something different that we're looking at. We're looking at a different date range. We're looking at a different sliced option. But when everything stays on the same page, it's pretty clear, or at least clearer to the user, that it's still within the same ranges that you've selected, or the same ranges that you know that this page for exists anyway. So staying within the same page, there is a lot of value to doing that and to creating something like this, I would say.
I agree. And I mean, consistency and clear communication with the end user is like one of the goals with any well-designed report, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's like what I would say, just as a best practice thing too, with like the visual header, it's like there's a lot of stuff that can be provided onto there, but that's one thing that I suggest people like doing is publishing, and actually like kind of literally taking your mouse, kind of scrolling over the page, seeing like what things pop up, because sometimes it might be like an object you've added to the page might have a visual header that you don't actually want to show up, because then it kind of breaks the illusion of like things that look like they're blended together and stuff. Or there's
absolutely.
A focus mode button on a single value card. There's no reason to full page a card that basically just goes to the upper left corner and is the same size. So like sometimes focus mode is nice on a chart that can increase in size, but it's the question really should be with every visual, is the header needed? Is it in the right order in the selection pane to get those to show up on top? Like that's lower in your selection pane than the button, so it popped up behind it. So you might need to move that up in your selection pane. But I encourage people to always review these things, and A, just turn it off entirely, or B, go through and just turn off the icons that aren't needed. I actually love the filter context icon, so if people have I've gotten so many questions over the years from clients where they are confused because it's oh, why is this number wrong? Hover over this little symbol and it will
Mm,
tell you, oh, I made a filter selection that I forgot about. So that does like it's
mm,
great to give transparency into what's being applied into that. So that's probably one of those things that I try to
mm.
keep on for most visuals if possible, just because it provides so many quick insights to what has been touched on the page.
This is a really valid point, because for me, it's kind of like it's the same as a tooltip essentially, but for filters.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you get that same
Yeah.
insight straight away. I would happily do that more often, but I think you spend too much time with the yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, with yeah, I think you spend too much time with them in general, having to decide which one's on and which one's off, because you can switch them all off, but if you switch
Yep.
them all off, you can't switch anything back on. So if I could switch them all off and say, okay, but only show me this one or only show me that one, this would be wonderful. But you're limited in your choice of what you can do. So actually, it's a really good point. It's nice to have that, because you do this question, the classic the classic Teams message: why is the data wrong? And you're like, okay, let's go, let's see what's going on here. And you got to go through, and this slice is selected and all that kind of stuff. So it would be wonderful to have that option, just so you can, for every visualization, say only switch this one on, or only switch that one on, rather than have to
Yep.
go through each option and select many. But yeah, it's tough to get all these. There are so many settings, right? It's tough to get all these settings just right.
Yeah, you have to go
I
through it with a fine-tooth comb, and it's not fun, you know, as part of
no.
the development, but it is necessary. I still wish
Mm,
someday. I talked to um, one of the guys on the Power BI team, and Will Thompson. I was completely spacing on his name for a second.
yeah. Okay.
One of the product managers, and hopefully they push it through. But there's no option to preview reading mode in Power BI Desktop. I would love to be able to flip that on, because certain features, things like the not needing to hold controlled activated bookmark, it would be really nice to test out the page, as it gets published without having to publish the file. Because if you have a 150 megabyte model and you need to like publish, changes, oh, I missed something, republish, wait 5 minutes, check it. Oh, I missed something else,
Mm,
republish, wait 5 minutes, and like it is a very painful process to go between a browser and desktop
mm,
to test this.
yeah.
So hopefully
It's like
it's someday they add that as an option. Just go to the view ribbon, preview reader mode or
totally.
something. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's doable. This
I
is
feel
running
like I
a
feel like
go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like you were just describing the most painful parts of my job, to be honest. It's really
Yeah.
exactly correct. And because I mean, me personally, I don't generally like, I mean, I'm the sort of person who, if anything is off the alignment, it upsets me, and I got to go and correct the alignment. That sort of thing, to have a huge report, you publish it and then you save it, and then you
Yeah.
check, oh, I go online and have a look. I mean, this is why I say when you develop a report, you publish it in your own workspace, like increment. You do the first step and you have a look to see how it's looking. So even for stuff like, it's a completely different thing to see if you've chosen, for example, on your data labels, all font size 10. What's font size 10 here and what's font size 10 when you publish a report and you put it on full screen can look so wildly different. So to have
Mhm.
that functionality that you just described would be really awesome. It'd be really, really helpful. It's nice. Did you post that as
Supposedly
an
it would
idea?
be
Because I want to go for it.
yeah, and I mean from what Will said, it should be an easy add because this is already running like a version of like the web scripts basically to
Mm,
load this in Power BI Desktop.
mm.
So it's really it's more of a matter I would imagine of making a UI visible toggle to configure to allow for something that's kind of already exists in the product.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, just thinking about one or two more things, if I may, just to
Yeah,
think
go
about
ahead.
shapes and whatever. Um, with shapes, because obviously you can give shapes. Actually, can I just? I'm going to share something else on my screen if that's okay. Just a different
Yeah.
report. I had this idea a while ago that I keep doing and then stop doing because I always do it at really inconvenient times. So with buttons, or in this case, shapes and bookmarks, what I really like about them is because it's shapes, I like to think about them as like using them for like weird things. Not weird things, but like slightly different things. Because for me, the way I use Power BI, yes, of course, when
Hmm.
I use it at work, it's all, reporting on business and all that type of stuff. But I think it's also important to think of Power BI. Sometimes you might disagree, is like a really fun toy, and to think about what strange or different things you can do that aren't strictly within like this business reporting stuff, or anyway, the point being is I wanted to kind of create a report that, and this is a really bare bones basic thing, that kind of explains Power BI. If you're a Power BI and you've never seen it before, what does everything do and how does it work? So I kind of took a screenshot of Power BI and I integrated that screenshot into a report and had like this idea of using like shapes and text within shapes to kind of do like a step-by-step guide of what is Power BI and what do certain things do within Power BI. So I have this button that I just saw like start your tour, and then this arrow is an arrow, but it's also it's a shape which activates the next bookmark, and the next bookmark is basically hides that shape, and you move on to this, which tells you what you do here, and then what is that part of Power BI? What does this mean? And then that sort of thing, basically, you know.
Now, I do want
Click
to
on.
mention that, like, since this is a Power BI report in the browser, what you've done is taken, I'm assuming, a screenshot of the Power BI desktop and put that onto a report canvas, right? And then layer
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Because I'm wondering if anybody in the chat's like, wait, can you edit Power BI in a web browser now? Yeah. So like, like it's a great walkthrough of it, but that is just an image that's behind
Yeah.
it for anybody wondering, can you have Power BI desktop in the web?
Yeah, that's a good point. I should have clarified that. Sorry if I
Yeah.
upset anyone by taking away some amazing functionality that doesn't exist. No, exactly. So basically, this is the background of this report is the Power BI screenshot essentially,
Hmm.
and this is what I mean. It's not the most well, it's a bit of a strange example perhaps, but I thought the idea of doing this sort of thing, of creating something that allows you, and this is why I enjoyed the thing with the shapes so much, the utilizing the shapes along with the bookmarks, because obviously if you have a huge arrow, it's really helpful rather than having like a square box or something, you know.
Yeah.
It's just a few. So then here, go here. So this is what these are, and this is what the visualizations pane is. So that's it. That's basically what it was. That's one of the reasons I enjoy shapes and buttons and bookmarks so much, is because for a large part, so just to show you what it is, so this is my Power BI report, and this is this is my browser with the screenshot. For a large part of what they are, it's basically, do you have an idea, and what idea do you have, and with that idea, can you basically, the only real, I mean, there of course there are limitations. It would be great, for example, if you could have multiple action bookmarks. For now, you're kind of limited to one action per bookmark. So I was speaking to someone a couple of months ago about the idea of having a bookmark that would do one thing and then like another thing. So that kind of starts to feel like more like a macro. So you're limited to the number of things that you can actually do.
Yeah.
But
Fair.
if you're thinking like a bit more of an abstract way of what you want to display and what your goal is, I mean, another thing is like the example that I just gave. You can use a very similar idea to basically describe what metrics and what KPIs are. If you have like an arrow pointing to a certain metric or a certain measure or a certain visualization, you can really precisely show what's actually happening. So if I were to create now, like insert, and I go like a shape. So all I'm doing really is if I could do this here, and then inside that shape, I could like put on my text to describe what this metric is, you know? Again, giving as much information to the user as possible without them having to, you know, I have no problem people asking me questions. Of course, this is perfectly fine, but empowering them a little bit more to access as much data, as much information as they can about their report. Because, you know, if you have a report that's being used by a large audience, not everyone's going to have the same information as like your key stakeholder or the person that you built the report with, you know? So just to kind of
Agreed.
help get the information across. I think it's a really helpful functionality. So for me, this is another thing about using the shapes and having them there. I showed a report before. Just let me do the same thing here. This is a published report, and this is the same thing as well. To have this as like a URL, you know, the button. You hover over it. Visit my YouTube channel. I'm not intentionally doing some marketing here. I'm just like showing you like this is what it does, and it goes to me. Oh,
Sure.
thanks,
Sure.
excuse me. I don't want to subscribe to my own channel, no. This type of stuff, to have a very visual element that has like an action involved. This is also like for me, something that's very, very helpful. To go back just very quickly what you said before about having the tooltips or the drill through. This is an example in a report. So here, because my visualizations here have tooltips, my options are, or that have tooltips that I designed. If I right click, I have my drill through, right? But there's a couple of things here. Because you have your own tooltip, my tooltip is pretty big. It's kind of a little bit hidden at first, and you have to know. And another way of doing it is, of course, I click on it, and then my drill through thing here activates, which is great. It is. It's a fantastic thing to have. But again, as I say, you actually have had to have actually clicked on it, which quite often some people won't know to do that.
Agreed.
To set it up, of course, it's really, as straightforward as most of them get. If you get your any button, for those who have never seen this functionality before, I'll just quickly do it. So, and your action is simply bookmark and then drill through, and then just select your drill through page. I don't have a drill through page, yeah? And then that's it. Once you've selected that item, you're going to drill through, you're going to go straight there, and it's a really helpful functionality to have. Again, I really do prefer the look, I've seen this. I'm talking about this new functionality in this report for some reason that I've not activated. I don't know why. That's quite strange. I have it on all my other reports. Maybe, I'm not sure. But on these newer style tooltips, it's there, and you hover over, and you can just drill through. It's for me a bit more user friendly than having that in a button, to be honest.
Agreed.
But again, on this topic, when you talk about buttons, bookmarks, all that kind of stuff. As I said at the very start, for me, it's one of the areas of Power BI where it's a bit more, depending on how you work, depending on what you prefer. There is really not a strong, this is something that should be done and you should do it this way. Yes, there are certain ways that are perhaps slightly easier. The only thing that I said I would always do is the no slices button. But with everything else in general, I could say, I could sit here and talk for 5 hours about bookmarks and buttons. And people might think all those ideas are stupid other than one. And that's completely legitimate. I mean, it's like a completely something that's just about your opinion and how you work with the tool. But I always encourage people on this topic is just to understand some key points that basically, if you right click, you have these options. You have your data, your display in your current page, and you have your all visuals and your selected visuals. Actually use those, because really often people don't even know that they exist, especially the current page.
Yeah, agreed.
Just open behind me.
Yeah,
especially my the current page. These ones for sure, but it wasn't actually up until probably 3 months ago that I started using that one, because I started to explore what could be done, and when I did, it's okay, this is awesome. It's right there. That's basically for me what it comes down to on this topic. The most difficult thing is, as you saw before, when I was struggling to actually get it right, is all visuals and selected visuals.
Yeah.
I always get that wrong. And I knew I was going to get it wrong. So I didn't get stressed this time, because I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it right a second time, and then try it a third time.
Well, and my number one recommendation too for bookmarks as a best practice is the anything that is not related to that bookmark should be disabled. So if that bookmark's only goal is filtering, turn off selection, turn off current page, because that's a note for you now later. Oh, you look at the settings. Okay, this bookmark is only filtering. This bookmark's goal is to filter and navigate. This, so it's small breadcrumbs that help to allude onto that, and it also just decreases the chance that it might accidentally flip a switch and do something that it's not supposed to do.
Very true. Yes, actually, I'm going to start doing that. I've along with stuff like grouping my bookmarks, which I never used to do. Grouping the bookmarks used to be hugely, well, that's not true. I wouldn't say hugely important. It was important for organizational method, but it didn't have anything that you could particularly see on the front side of the report. But now that we have this functionality with the navigator, it's tremendously helpful, because you can have all these. Actually, an important thing about that as well is that with your bookmarks, it's not like when you navigate to the next page, you can't see the bookmarks. You can always see all the bookmarks for all the page. So from an organizational perspective, it's really helpful now to actually group them, not only for this, but also for your own sanity, because it's just, it gets messy. You see people and they say, oh yeah, I have a report, and I think, it was at speaking to Ed a few months ago, and he was saying that he had a report with something like 150 bookmarks or something like that. And I'm like, that's, I mean, respect, because I don't have the emotional capacity to deal with 150 bookmarks in one report. I'll just have a breakdown.
Yeah,
But
that's a little rough.
when you have that many, it's a really important thing.
Well, exactly. I mean, organizationally, for both the selection pane and that, like, it helps me to immediately go in and just see the, it's almost like foldering DAX measures. Putting them into the folder. You don't have to. It doesn't add, it doesn't change the performance, but it helps to organize by either page or function or the types, something just to clean things up a bit, so you're not sifting through an ocean of them, especially if you had 150 bookmarks.
Yeah, it's crazy. Am I the only one who can hear my dog in the background?
I can hear him.
Yeah, okay.
No
starting
worries.
to get my kid's kid's bedtime, I think. So in regards, what I had to show with bookmarks, that was pretty much covered it, to be honest. I understand with bookmarks, people have used them before and they kind of know what they're doing. It's probably not the most complex subject you're going to get on your channel today, mate, or in general.
Well, I mean, I'd argue that bookmarks are incredibly complex. I mean, the output is simple. I want X to happen when I click this, and it's usually like these three things, but there's a million things that goes into the configuration. So it's good to always talk about them, see the different scenarios, use cases, especially pros and cons. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I honestly never considered what you said before, though, about the fact that the documentation level, that when you do most things, you can see it work. Like if you do DAX, you can see the DAX, you can read the DAX. But you can't understand a bookmark unless someone actually writes it down, unless someone actually explains. I think you've
all it is a magic
in that regard.
Yeah, it's just literally a magic button. You click it and you look onto the page, and hopefully you see what happens, or you have the selection pane open, you see what visibilities change and stuff. But it's really like looking into a black box. So like basic stuff, really, for me, the selection pane is just a quick screenshot, easy way to document and throw it in like a OneNote or something, and it goes a long way. So
I would love to have a bookmark with a functionality a bit like random, where you just like press it and something random happens. That would be really good fun. I know technically you can't do it, but just some kind of like, like a magic 8-ball or the random function in DAX. You click it and then something happened. Don't know how that happened. There you go. It'll create some insight. But yes, they are complex, you're right, in that regard. But from the front end, from actually just looking at the report, it's very much just, there's a button, it does something, it's been done now.
I want to mention, by the way, apparently Matthias is mentioning that with the Power BI tools, you can actually extract and get the code behind each bookmark, that's going to be really, really, really useful. I tried to at one point to actually because you can change a PBX to a zip. All Office files are zip files, and I attempted to dig to actually get into that, but the JSON code had so many like insane number of levels because on one report page with the number of filters and measures and everything else, the number of touch points is massive per bookmark. It's like, all right, it's way too complex to make a template that can extract without erroring every bookmark in every report in every scenario. So I stopped even trying. But if there is a tool that does this now, or will be doing this, I think soon, is what Matthias was saying, like in a new update, that's going to be hugely transformational, I think, for documenting of bookmarking and stuff, to be able to extrapolate that information out.
I will use that immediately, to be honest. It would be a fantastic thing to have. So I appreciate that information. I'm just gonna throw a link into the chat, by the way, regarding this idea that I had on regarding the page navigation pane. I think just if I can stick that in so people can have a look, and if they like the idea, perhaps. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to post things in the chat, but I'll try and see.
Make a quick comment, and then what I do is I make you a moderator, and then you can drop it into there. So just say like hello and I flag you as a moderator.
Hello, there you go. I've said hello, and just to add that, because I think.
Give me one quick second. Now I see it.
Sorry.
And you are now add moderator. There you go. Now you can throw the link in.
Fantastic. So if people would look at this idea and give it potentially a vote, it would be much appreciated, because I think it would make our lives a little bit easier when we're using navigation. It's a fantastic thing. You have the pane, you sit there and it's done. As I say, I use it when I can, but I don't like hiding stuff behind visual. Look at that, and hopefully it can make our lives a little bit easier, because that's what it's meant to exist for, right? Making our lives a little bit easier.
And I will actually say, just as we wrap up, did you drop it in the YouTube chat?
I did.
Interesting. I'm still not seeing it come up. Throw it to me really quick in the Skype chat, and I'm going to drop it in right now. And I'm also going to recommend for people tuning in, we're going to also do a social media post in this, linking back to the video to get a bit of coverage on this, because I do agree with Ben that this is really something that needs to be changed in Power BI. So here we go. I'm grabbing that, and then
that'd be cool.
Boom. There's the link now.
Yeah, because I saw it in like in May. This idea came up. Oh, that we can do, and I was so much looking forward to it, and I saw it and I loved it at first, and then I realized, and I was devastated. But at the same time, I was happy because the bookmarks I didn't even know was going to exist, and I didn't say so. And on one side, I was like, fantastic. Yep. The bookmark navigation works wonderfully, and because I use so many others, that'll be helpful. But page navigation, I'm sure it'll get done, but it'll get done faster if everyone clicks on that link.
Excellent. Yeah, get that vote. Get a few hundred votes into there for sure.
Yeah.
But otherwise, Ben, I've really appreciated you coming on today. This has been fun. I think we both learned things from each other, and those are my favorite sessions, when we can just hang out and be able to show cool stuff on in Power BI.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for inviting me onto your show with your best background in all of BI streaming, because it is a wonderful background that I have. I love those changing lights that you have there.
Yeah, I mean, ironically, like I never actually get to really experience them during the day because they're behind me. But so like live streams are nice because at least I get to actually see the colors from the feed that I'm getting back to myself. Yeah. But yeah, I would at some point I'm happy to come on your stream as well, and we can just hang out.
That'd be fantastic. Yeah, like I say, when I do my streams, it's really just chatting about stuff and what we do, and so nothing to prepare. All good, mates. So yes, let's do that. That'd be good fun.
Excellent. And looking forward to doing that soon. And then otherwise, everyone else, enjoy the rest of your Friday afternoon, evening, night, and for my Oceania and Australia, New Zealand friends, enjoy your Saturday morning, early Saturday morning, I believe. Otherwise, yeah, I will see everyone next week.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Cheers. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships as well. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on social media to help pass on this awesome content and to help the channel grow. So until next time.